Hello, welcome to Hobby Chat with Adam's Hobby Stuff. And today I just want to have a quick couple of minutes talking about rules bloat, or whether games have got too complicated and too big, and whether actually being simple is better. Now, a couple of things got me thinking about this lately. Firstly, Necromunda. If you watch the channel lately, you'll see that I've been doing some Necromunda scenery and doing a small table to play inside the house while it's cold in the garage. And also it's a quick and easy way of introducing people that maybe pop around and want to have a couple of games. And a friend of mine came over who hasn't played Necromunda for years, hasn't played any Games Workshop stuff for a number of years, and plays Warlord games, bottle action, that kind of thing. And we talked about Necromunda, and he said, I fancy a game of that, used to play that back in the early 2000s. So we did. Now I think he was expecting that we were going to play classic Necromunda, one of the very few rule books that I've kept from those days, mainly because Necromunda was and probably still is my favourite Games Workshop game. I've played so much of this game over the years, it's crazy, and love the old book. Very characterful, you know, you go through the characteristics of the game, shooting, but then the coolest thing I always found in the book was you've got nice pictures of the weaponry, really evocative. This wasn't the first book that came out for Necromunda. This was the eventual one that they added all the extra rules in that came out. So at the time, the rules expanded a little bit, went from the basic rules, and they started introducing things like the Redemptionists, the Spira Hunters, Ratskin Renegades, all these extra things that got added in and then made what at the time was considered to be a massive rule book, which this is what it was. And, you know, at the time people were saying, remember, wow, that's a lot of rules to remember. Now let's parallel that to what we've ended up with new Necromunda. Now bear in mind, I'm not coming at this in a negative perspective because I really enjoy the new Necromunda. As you can see in my little stack here, I've got every single Necromunda expansion. I collect the cards, I collect all the games. I love the game. But to an outsider, to someone that hasn't played Necromunda for a number of years, this is a rather intimidating pile of books. Topped off here, Book of Ruin, the one that I have not got a gang for. Why haven't I got a gang for it? I don't know. Something didn't quite sit right. I don't know, and it never really inspired me to get. But just flicking through this, for example, you know, this is one of the older ones. Even in this, there is a lot of rules. Now, I am going to do a Gene Stealer Cult Gang, actually. That was rather unusually opened. That wasn't deliberate. So there are bits in this book that I'm eventually going to do, but it was probably, for me, one of the least inspiring books. Nice background, some nice information, some interesting rule pieces, but a lot of rules packed into one book. And I think it generates and builds to a rather intimidating game system to get into. The classics at the bottom here, you know, the rule book and the Gangs of the Underhive, really is what, in size-wise, this book represents. Now, it's great, there's loads of extra background, but really, do we need all this to make a fun game system? I don't necessarily think we do. Immersion is fantastic. Really being able to get into the nitty-gritty of every last thing is fantastic. But there is so much from all these books that I have never, ever used. And I'm sure a lot of people are exactly the same. Tons of it that they've never delved into and probably never will. Now look, that's fine. Because having sections of a game that, you know, it only appeals to a niche market, brilliant. But I think we need to really look at what each of the Games Workshop games represents, because this to me no longer feels like a secondary system. It's a game system all by itself. And look, am I really getting to anywhere on this? I don't know, but it feels like they're turning all of these games into a massive game system on themselves. And I do wonder whether we need all these books. Now actually, Book of the Outcast, lovely book, love the scenery, but I haven't done an Outcast gang yet. Why not? Well, don't know, it doesn't feel, as someone who's got all of the gangs, that it adds a huge amount to the game. It adds something, it adds some extra scenarios, it adds other pieces, but the more and more I think about it, the more I think they're expanding for the sake of it. Now, that being said, as much as I'm saying they're expanding for the sake of it, Ash Waste is coming out some point later in this year, and I will buy it, and it will add things onto the Necromunda game system, and it will be great, I am absolutely sure. However, I do think they've gone too far with the book. So what's been making me think that? Well, principally, as I said, a friend came over and wanted to play Necromunda. Been something he's not played for a number of years. But the other reason I thought about it is, if you watch the channel, you'll see that I've been doing some HeroQuest lately. And here's the HeroQuest rulebooks. So I bought the HeroQuest game system, and essentially it has not changed since the late 80s, early 90s. played now about 3/4 the way through the Quest book. Just doing it with my family, so it's slightly different perspective on the games, I suppose, because, the kids and the wife are joining in, and it's unusual for us to play as a family together, especially, what would be considered nerd games. Traditional board games, yeah, we do that every now and then, but to play what my particular wife considers as it's your nerdy Warhammer, quite unusual, but we've been enjoying it. Why? Because it's super simple, super fun. You don't necessarily need rules to make the enjoyment. You can take that from your mind because you're imagining what's going on, and a simple rule system kind of facilitates that. Now, would I want to play every game system this simple? No, I wouldn't. However, in a couple of days I'm going down to London, spend a weekend with some mates down there, and we're going to play some 40k, practicing for a tournament that we're going to a week on Sunday. And we're doing some match play games, first time in a long while. I've done a couple recently, but we're doing some more. And I'm taking this down with us. And everybody's actually excited to play it. Which in itself is quite funny, that people that play big, complicated game systems are looking forward to something this thin. I think there needs to be a balance. Somewhere between this, which is too simple, and that, especially for a secondary system, which is getting, I think, a little bit too complicated. Now, the other thing that's been making me think about complications in Games Workshop games in particular is the sheer trauma that I'm currently going through trying to prep for a tournament. So, here's the rulebook. Look, 40k core rulebook hasn't changed a great deal, and I thought I'm prepping for a tournament. Now, when I normally play, I've played a lot of what you would call narrative games over the last few years. And you take the rulebook with you, you take your codex, and generally, actually, to be perfectly honest, I dig out the laptop or, generally the iPad, and I'll get onto Battlescribe, and I'll put myself together a Battlescribe army list. So if I dig the iPad out here, sorry, I'm bringing far too many props onto this one. Let's have a look. So if I go onto Battlescribe, which I'll open up so we don't have anything passwords, I've got other rosters and stuff on there. So that's my Chaos Army that I'm working on at the moment, some Titan stuff, and my Fists of Caliban list. And generally that's how I do it. I'll just bang it on there, and I'll look at some rules and whatever, and it's all various points. But I tend to then think, that's it. Never really have I had to delve properly into all the Q&As and all the things and the stuff you have to do to prep for a tournament. And it also made me think, God, how complicated has this got? Because last time I went to a tournament, you had the rulebook and I had the codex, and this was 15 years ago. That was it. And there may have been, there was generally one Q&A on the system that you need to look at to prep. And look, this is the days before, everyone had a smartphone and all those kind of things, and I get that the internet has expanded. But prepping for this tournament now, I've gone through this the book, and I'm writing down kind of what I want to put in my army and jotting some points, and I will put it through Battlescribe later, but I want to try and go a bit old school like I used to. However, the problems you run into is you think, right, well, I've got the rule book, and now I will start with, rustlings of paper in the background there. I need the core book Q&A. So here is a 10-page Q&A for the core book. Right, well, now that's fixed, the core book, so that's okay then. Okay, so now I've got my codex, but actually there's a Q&A for that as well, because we've got that wrong, so I need to dig that out and have that Q&A. So that's it surely for the core book. Well, no, because now there's a balanced data slate that I need to have a look at that tells me some points and changes to that as well. Oh, well, that's okay, so we're done now. Well, actually we're not done, because there's a whole other book that actually has got bits that you might want to use for your Codex Chaos Knights. I've not even got that with me. A friend of mine has got the Psychic Awakening books that has some relevant rules for this codex in, and he sent me some screenshots of those particular pieces. It starts getting baffling. And then on top of that, you think, well, okay, I'm writing my list, but actually I need the latest chapter approved, because this is where all the points are, and the point system for Chaos Knights, and I've literally bought a book for half a bit at the bottom of a page. I think it'll work for the rest of them, I'm aware of that. And then we'll take a chapter approved, because the tournaments are using the scenarios from there. That seems like an awful lot of books. And it might be that I'm getting maybe slightly cynical in my old age, prepping for my first tournament in years, and maybe it's because the experience is vastly different the last time I went to a tournament. And actually, when I go back to playing what you would call scenario-specific play, or not scenario-specific, but just friendly play, more sort of scenario-driven, playing for fun, playing a massive game, I won't use all these. I'll have the core book that I'll skim into occasionally, and the codex, and who cares about all the extra bits, because we're just playing for fun. So maybe it is the tournament prep that's making me look at the books in kind of horror. speaking of which, as well, there's a tournament pack to go on. This is where I'm playing my local tournament in Grimsby, so Grim Dice. And actually this is quite a nice little tournament rule pack and fairly sensible. Actually very, very similar to what you would have found many years ago when I participated in and ran tournaments for Games Workshop and local clubs. So I think all this is fine. If you're a tournament player, do you know what? Absolutely, you can dig through here. And I actually have quite enjoyed digging through the books, looking at all the stratagems, which normally I don't care about, because when you're playing 10,000 points, to be honest, you know, what does 12 CP really do for you? What does a few stratagems do for you? But I have actually really enjoyed digging through the armament book properly, looking at some of the rules, digging through the stratagems, and do you know what? I understand the army a lot better than I probably ever would have done just playing a narrative big points game. So there's definitely a place for tournament play. I mean, you know, it's quite enjoyable. I do get that. But I do think what Workshop are in danger of doing is scaring people off with the sheer volume of books and the sheer volume of bits you need. Because, you know, pop into a tournament, okay, the tournament ticket was only 20 quid, and there's still a few left, so if you do fancy coming and giving me an absolute kick-in in Grimsby, Grim Dice Tournament, Sunday the 20th of Feb, jump to their page and have a look. But to prep for that tournament, it's cost me 20 quid for the chapter approved books. It's cost me half an ink cartridge to print these things out. And were I to actually want to use the book, The Psychic Awakening, I'm going to have to buy that as well. It just feels like there's a lot of barriers up to certain types of play that Games Workshop are doing. Not necessarily sure how we fix it, and actually not necessarily sure it even needs fixing, because, do you know what, it's just different types of play. And I think that's absolutely fine. You know what, people like the games for different reasons. However, what I've seen in the last couple of weeks is it could be quite off-putting for someone who used to play a lot of necromunda, who then played a game with me, really enjoyed it, but said, there's no way I'm getting into it and buying all this stuff. And I said, well, look, you don't need to, I've got them, don't worry about it, we'll just play every now and then together. Probably would have bought into it if these were the two books that he had to buy. Just some thoughts. Don't know whether I've solved anything there or just rambled for 10 minutes. So, but look, that's just really what popped into my head in the last few days. Now, I am still prepping for this tournament. I'm doing some match play games this weekend. I'll probably put some shots up on my Instagram. I don't often put pictures up on my Instagram of when I play games, but this one's an interesting one, so I might do, and we'll see. So what have I spent my hobby money on over the last 7 days or 14 days? I've not done a hobby chat for a while. It's been a couple of weeks. Well, I said I'm prepping for this tournament and this event, so I've bought a couple of Harbinger box sets. So Harbinger Warglaives and Harbinger Helverins, because although it's going for Nurgle, obviously you have to convert these now. Because it was a couple of weeks ago that I bought these, I'm actually most of the way through painting them. So I've done some little conversion works and just painting them up in my Nurgle scheme. So keep an eye on the channel for that, and you'll see these coming out, and check out Instagram and things. Now, I also did buy the Captain model that came out, the Gravis Armoured Captain. Now, again, I'm just doing a bit of work to this towards my Fists of Caliban. I'm probably not going to paint him for a while, but I've done some conversion work, and I've also, for the first time in years, done some magnetisation. And this video is going to drop on Sunday morning, so keep an eye on that one if you want to see how I've magnetised my Space Marine Captain. Keeping a check on that one. And other pieces, one of my personal favourite things to always use, Milliput. I finally, they got some back into one of my local stores. In the flesh, so pick up a couple of packs, because I do so many sort of modelling and hobby projects that you always need this kind of stuff. Absolute winner for me. And the cure-all, especially when you're painting Nurgle, Vallejo Game Wash, a dipping formula. I use it so much, I should probably stop, and I should probably teach myself how to paint without it again. But do you know what, for the moment, it's one of my favourites. So that's what I spent my hobby cash on. I hope that ramble and waffle made some sense to you. Just my thoughts. Again, no rights or wrongs in this hobby, and that's the beautiful things about the hobby. You know, hobby how you like. That's the great thing about it, such a wide depth. And I will report back on my kind of tournament experience, my match play experience, and see, you know, whether that's going to be an avenue I'm going to go down again, or whether I'm going to go straight back to just narrative play and massive games, because you don't have to remember as many rules, and if you lose loads of stuff and they die, it doesn't matter, you've always got more. So we'll see. Right, if you like that, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, and I'll see you next time.